So, thanks for coming out to this. My name is Andras Jones, and I am the host of the World is Wrong podcast, where this season we've been featuring Paul Williams in a season called The Other Paul Williams. Paul's in town to promote his book, Harvard, Hollywood, Hitmen, and Holy Men, which he'll be reading passages from at the Larry Edmonds bookshop tomorrow, and I gave out some flyers, and if any of you want to get some of those flyers, just let me know if you didn't already get one. And Paul, out of it.
Well, is Barry here?
Barry Gordon, the star of Out of It, is in the house. Let's give him a big applause. Get in the middle here. Barry Gordon. Star of another one of my favorite films, 1,000 Clowns, but you just saw a tour de force performance from this young actor.
It was fun.
What was it like watching it? It's been a long
It's
time.
been a very long time, and yet I remember it very vividly. I mean, when it went from shot to shot, I just remembered, you know, the whole experience of shooting it. I almost died. Yeah, I don't know if you remember in the limousine scene, when I was coming out of the limousine in the fantasy and I hit my head coming out, and I came up, I said, ow, and I looked, and my whole hand was red, and they rushed me to St. Joseph's. And
The callous director doesn't remember.
no, and I still have the stitches.
Use the mic, Paul, so we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But there was a lot of firsts in that movie for me.
All right.
First nude scene?
The first nude scene, only nude scene. Driving a stick shift. That was the one time that I did that. And not being very athletic, the football scenes, the swimming, all of it. Yeah, I think Paul was disappointed that I was not quite the varsity person that he was. But we made it work.
Strangely, you know, it had its own charm to hear, you know, I wrote it not with you in mind, and then it became a whole other animal. With, no, you know, a different than what I had imagined, but it worked just fine.
Thank you.
Worked fine.
Thank you.
So it was fun. And of course, you know, every scene there really happened to me in real life almost.
Oh, wow.
Except not the fantasy scenes. But, you know, that scene where you're in the shower with Christine.
Oh, yeah.
And you put the soap up through her bra. I mean, that little detail I remembered from, you know, from real life. And at the end, when in real life that happened, at the end of it you went,
Yeah.
I think I went,
So now, wait, Paul, you told the story that the shooting, the gun scene in the bathroom is actually based upon a real thing that happened in your high school. A lot of stuff. The paddling really happened. All of it.
everything really happened, except the last scene, of course, was in real life. My friend Bruce Vader, who was 15, and I went to Boy Scout camp with him, and his father was a troop leader, and they inducted me into the Ipana Club by rubbing Ipana toothpaste on my genitals, which is not pleasant. But then when we came back to school, Bruce was being tormented by this big bully, Timmy Wall. And finally, Bruce couldn't take it anymore. He went home, he got his father's shotgun, sawed it off, came back to Massapequa High School, went into the urinal, and Timmy Wall was taking a piss. And he said, "This is for you, Timmy." And he killed him. And then he walked away and walked onto Sunrise Highway. He wasn't running away from the crime, he was just dazed. And they put him in jail for 20 years.
So you turned it into something more like
I don't like violence.
Yeah, good.
I don't like violent films, but
Well,
it's based on that.
Paul, I know we want to open up for questions, but I just would like you to set the set the context for this film a little bit, because, you know, we're watching it now, but every time I watch it, I get more out of it. But one of the things that really strikes me every time I watch it is how many films came after it that feel, whether they were influenced by it or not, this is ahead of them. This is before Woody Allen. This is before The Graduate. This is before American Graffiti. This is before Carnal Knowledge. This is before so many films that explored a lot of this stuff. And I'd just like you to talk about, like, where you were, who you were hanging out with when you started this film, and sort of what happened to it, and why it wasn't released until 1969.
Well, I recommend you buy Harvard, Hollywood, Hitman, and Holy Men and read about 5 chapters.
Yeah.
I can't go over them all
Give
now.
it a little abridged. Just set the context for us.
Oh, well, I don't know what to say. I mean, Marty Scorsese we both applied to be the 2 students in the NYU first class graduate students in film. And Marty said, you know, you really should study with Haig Manoogian, you know. And he was right, because I knew nothing about film history. I knew about photography, I knew about people, I knew about acting, but I was never a film buff. And so when it came to writing, I really knew I didn't know very much, so I figured I'd write what I knew about. And in fact, I just ended up with 100 cards on the floor with real scenes that happened to me. And then the trick was to somehow get it into a story, write some connections. And it's funny because a little later I was at Francis Coppola's house in Middle Valley, and on the one wall of his writing room was metal with all these magnets on it. And he would attach the cards to the magnets. So that's the difference between low budget and high budget. The low budget, you look down on the floor, break your neck. And when you got a big budget, you sit in a chair and you move the magnets around. But anyway, what can I say? More context. Oh, well, what happened, of course, is Ed Pressman tried for a year to get money from the studios for the picture. In the meantime, luckily, I made a documentary about Chanzeau, a French village, and it showed, Stanley Kaufman showed it on his TV show in New York City, with Hawaii by George Roy Hill, saying my picture was much better than George Roy Hill's. And that night, I go down to Herbert Berghoff Studios to start my learning about acting, and he happened to see that the film Chanzeau on TV the very night. I'm still 22 years old, but he says, and he was very impressed. So Uta Hagen and Herbert Berghoff took me under their wing for a year. I mean, Robert Duvall was in the class, a lot of good people were there. And I learned a lot. I mean, we should ask Barry. I mean, I think I was pretty good with the actors.
Absolutely.
So, but I didn't know a whole lot a year before.
But the budget was like, what, $100,000?
It was a little,
Very
it was a bit more.
Yeah.
What happened was, the budget was $80,000, but we speeded through the first 2 weeks. I want to make sure we finished the movie. And then Ed's mother loved what she saw.
She was in a scene. She's in the behind you in the
Yeah,
Romeo
and she said, slow down, I'll give you more money. So it went up to about twice that. But that's basic. I mean, I used that technique even later when I was doing Nunzio for Universal, and the budget was millions of dollars. I still made sure the first couple of weeks we had all the easy stuff so I get ahead of schedule. And then toward the end of the film, I'm over schedule, but what are they gonna do? It's real. Oh, well, there's a funny story on Nunzio, because we shot it in Brooklyn. I don't know, anyway, the mob was our location managers. And, the capo, the lieutenant, we ran a quarter of Brooklyn. He was the location manager, because they had firebombed Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night Fever. And when they came to us, they said, you don't want any bombing, we'll be your location manager. So we said, fine. And they took this job very seriously. And so we were falling behind schedule later in the film. And this guy, Sammy, the series, he came on to set, and we were in the middle of a scene, shooting. And he walks right into the scene. Hey, you, come on back here. And he wore 2 pistols. And he takes me behind the set, and he says, hey, you're over budget. I said, yeah. He said, well, you're over budget. I said, well, what are you talking about, Sammy? He said, what do you mean, you're not upset? I said, wait, is this your money, Sammy? He said, what? Are you working for Universal? What's your... He said, you don't give a fuck? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. And Sammy was wondering, well, you don't give a fuck. You don't give a fuck.
Well, I like to give a few people an opportunity to ask a question. And so, do you have a question down there?
Yeah, you were talking a little, you alluded to how you cast Barry, and that you had someone else in mind. Can you talk a little about how the genesis of your casting?
Well, you know, I love Barry, and I don't, you know, and he did a wonderful job, the movie. The truth is that I met Jon Voight after we had signed Barry, and we were very low budget. And I thought, Voight might be okay in this role. And but we already spent the money, and I told Jon I'd make another movie with him.
Wow.
If he would play Russ. And that's really how it happened. That was the compromise. Jon would play Russ, and I'd do another movie.
And of course, at that point, Barry was coming off of 1,000 Clowns. It's kind of a major...
Barry was a name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jon was unknown.
So you had John in mind for that part?
No, when I met Jon, I thought, oh, maybe he could have done the part. By that, we'd already cast Barry.
You would have been much more athletic.
Yeah, it would have been a different film, but it may not have been as funny.
Okay, you had a question down there?
Okay, I wanted to say, I think I watched the film for the first time, and it seems like it's very much talking about the... It seems like the film's talking about the kind of pretentious phase a lot of artists kind of go through. Do you think that's important for a lot of students going into like philosophy film or whatnot to go through? And what advice would you have for like young artists and filmmakers?
Well, I can do the second part of the question because I don't understand the first.
My bad.
But the second part is, I just want to say that I was always a director. I never moved my way up to director. I was directing 2-minute films, 6-minute films, 12-minute films, 20-minute film, a feature, another feature. So I was always a director. So what I'm really saying is, my advice is to go make your film. That's what I would do. I'd learn. And you learn a lot. You make lots of money. Hey, I never really liked any of the films I made till now, 50 years later, where I can look at them and not see all the mistakes I made.
That's true.
And frankly, I had a good time at this film for the first time in a half century.
I'm glad.
Wait, I don't know, do you want to answer the first half? I didn't really
Well,
understand it.
I mean, I think that, I don't think it's a phase you have to go through, but it's definitely a phase, at least that I thought the character was going through. And he was very bright, but also very, and I, not realizing necessarily that it was autobiographical, and not referring to it that way. But the way I saw the character, he was also very self-destructive. That he kept ruining his best moments. And I do know people like that, and I think that is something, I don't think it's a phase you have to go through, but I definitely think it's a phase that a lot of teenagers go through. They overthink, they go to a place where, it looks like everything's coming into place, and they do something to screw it up. And to me, that was who this character was.
And some of us, not just as teenagers, even into our 40s and 50s.
I was going to say the book Harvard Hollywood Hitmen and Holy Men is a life story of blown opportunities.
I wanted you to share could you share, because it's in the book, what Jean Renoir gave you as advice, because I feel like that might be useful.
Oh, well, while I was undergraduate at Harvard, senior year, I helped teach the photography course because I was a pretty good photographer. And Jean Renoir came to give a speech, and because I was an undergraduate kind of photographic, like they introduced me to him, and I spent a little time with him. And he said, you know, you got 3 movies in you. That's all you have in a lifetime. After you made your 3 movies, you're just repeating yourself over and over again. So he said, make sure you don't lose yourself in movies. Make sure you live a life in between your movies and enjoy life, and don't get too mesmerized by this distraction of movies. The movies are fun, but they're not life. And I really took that to heart. And so my whole life, I mean, you know, it's actually easier to have a career when you start a movie before your prior movie comes out. So you keep leapfrogging and you stay in business. It's much harder to make a movie that doesn't do well financially, and then do another movie which doesn't do well financially, and then do another movie that doesn't do well financially, and then I make a whole career in movies that didn't do well financially. That's much harder to do, believe it or not.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we have one over there.
50 some odd years later, this movie's still being shown here. Why do you think it resonates with people so much?
Well, I think there's a certain truthfulness about it. That it came from truth, and it was interesting. It was true, and it was interesting because the guy was a little bit more, you know, intellectual than most kids, and he had a very active intellectual life while still being a teenager. And then I think it was kind of beautifully made. So on its own, it had its own reality, not a usual one for films. I mean, you know, moments were allowed to go. It was almost Warhol-esque in certain. Yeah, you always got a chance to see what happened next and next and next in these difficult situations. You didn't simply go off to the next moment. So I think is that an answer?
Yeah.
That's an answer.
The hardest scene for me in that movie was the last one.
Oh, I know.
Because I had no quite idea what I was thinking, and I was and watching it, I was trying to remember what was going on in my head in that last close-up. That's very, very tricky and demanding. Did I get what you wanted?
Well, good enough. Good enough. I'm being serious. Good enough. I mean, what I had in mind was that there's a social context in high school which you believe in. It's called belief. It's the lowest level of consciousness. Belief. And when you're in high school, hey, that's the captain of the cheerleaders. That's the football star.
Yeah.
These things are for real. And really, I hope this film was a story of a guy moving through that, who comes to say, there's more to life than this. I wonder what's coming next.
Right.
And I think you got that.
You know, and when I was watching it, I couldn't help but think about the last scene in The Graduate, which is it's sort of flipped.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same, kind of the same shot, but it's sort of the opposite. At the end of The Graduate, it's sort of this bleak thing, where it feels like, oh, they're going into a cage. Whereas this, it feels like he's being let out of the cage.
Right.
But every time I see it. Now, had you seen that kind of a shot in a film before, and that's why you were putting it in there, or was that?
No, and I definitely, this idea of moving through basically a delusional, or it's not delusional, it's a low level of consciousness. The next movie was really about a guy who gets very ethical and moral and becomes a revolutionary.
That's what you'll be seeing in just a few minutes.
That's the next movie. And he has to move through that to get to a specific point. And it ends with a similar kind of, I don't want to give the ending away, but it's a very similar kind of ending. And the film after that was really about a guy who no longer believes he no longer has ethics, he's just an egomaniac. Believe it or not, this is getting higher and higher. I mean, we have our people who go to church, we have our lawyers and doctors, they're ethical. And then we have our presidents who don't give a damn about anything except their own power. So that's their ego sainthood. And that's the movement up in our society. The less masters you have, when in belief you have, the Sufis would say you have 6,000 masters. But if you get rid of them and you become a professional, ethical person, you only have 3,000 masters. And if you say, fuck everybody, I'm just out for myself, you only have 1,500 masters. So you can outmaneuver the people below you. The fewer inhibitions you have, the more you can move, the less you're inhibited, the higher you can go. Now in our society, that's about, we think that's high when you're an ego saint. But if you then, the next movies get into the realms beyond that. They're about the destruction of the ego and about the cultivation of the essence and how you move even higher to fewer and fewer masters until eventually you get very clear and objective. That's the ultimate goal of it all, to be just objective and to be able to feel your body up and down and to be able to feel your heart. That's where it's all. That's what the book's about.
From Harvard to Hollywood to Hitmen.
The whole.
There you go.
That's sort of the truth.
We have another, I don't know how much time we have here. How are we doing on time?
We can do a couple more.
Okay, just a couple more questions. There's one back there.
Paul, you're retired now. Do any projects, or I assume, but do any
I'm certain nobody's
ever
giving me
come
a
to
job.
mind that you'd like to work on?
Are there projects you'd like to work on, Paul?
You mean movie projects?
Yeah.
No.
You're done. You left it all on the field.
Well, I am interested in what the book is about.
Yeah.
I am interested in, I'll probably write some more, but before I came to LA, I went to my old friends at Princeton and Harvard, and a lot of them very distinguished professionals in their fields, education, history, science. I've never seen more pessimism about the future of this country than I saw in the last week or so. So, I'm not one of these guys who say, hey, this is going on forever. I mean, I feel like Woody Allen said, you know, film is a distraction. It's something we do to have fun. It's not life. We do film so we don't think about dying. I kind of agree with him. He said, I won't give 1 penny for film preservation. You know, you can burn them when I'm dead.
Well, yes. Well, let's get one last question back here.
This is actually a question for both of you. First of all, congratulations. I love the movie, hadn't seen it before. And the performances were so natural, and those kind of Warholian takes you mentioned, the performances of those long takes, like the scene in the car, and you're about to kiss and you don't kiss, they seem so natural and spontaneous. Can you talk about your rehearsal process with the actors, or how you achieve that kind of spontaneity?
A lot of it was due to my klutziness, my natural klutziness, as Paul knows. I couldn't drive a stick shift, and so you would see the car. But I don't think that was supposed to happen. There were some other moments that probably weren't supposed to happen. But I definitely think that Paul set a mood of verisimilitude. I mean, he wanted real people, and that was kind of my instinct as an actor, was always to kind of go to that place and not gild too much, not put too much on it, and
It had a power that way.
and thank you. So it was a good marriage of Paul's directorial sense, I think, and the way I kind of approached things. And I tended to approach things moment by moment, and I like doing that. And Paul gave me the real freedom to do that. So.
So, just to let you know, Paul has so many great stories. Many of them are in his book, Harvard, Hollywood, Hitmen, and Holy Men, and he is going to be at Larry Edmond's bookshop tomorrow. What time is he going to be there?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. He'll be reading the book. We can have a lot more time to talk and ask questions. We do need to get to the Revolutionary. Paul, did you want to say anything to set up the Revolutionary, just really quickly? It's all true.
No. The only thing I would say about Revolutionary is, again, it's an unusual picture from the point of view of pace and rhythm. I think it's very well shot and extremely well acted. But it's not, I don't like violence, and I don't like hyping the drama, which is really, in many cases, that's what everybody does, and there's nothing, I mean, that's what Hollywood movies are. I think perhaps I'm on the wrong continent. But it's like a European film. It's not your, shoot 'em ups.
And we do have to recognize too, the team that Paul put together for this movie.
Proud of it. Yeah.
Because the cinematographer was John Avildsen, who of course went on to direct Rocky and so many great other movies, and became a director in his own right, a superb one. Michael Small went on to win Oscar nominations as a film composer. So Paul he had an eye for talent in those early years, and really put together great people who had great careers, and they can thank
Gretchen
Paul
did
for
fine.
those careers. And Gretchen did great, and John did really great. So it was, and I ended up being a Ninja Turtle. But that's enough. So-
Well, we need to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you very much to the New Beverly for having us here. This would never happen without this theater. It is the capital of cinema, and thanks for coming.
Big hand for Andras Jones, Barry Gordon, and Paul Williams. We'll have about a 10-minute break, followed by Paul Williams, The Revolutionary.